We are episode 5. I can't believe time has flown. 5 weeks of this. I'm having a lot of fun. How are you going with it?
Look, I'm loving it as well. It's been, look, for the viewers or the listeners, we were doing a test essentially. Hey, let's run 6 episodes, see how it goes. And I'm really enjoying it. I hope if you're listening at home that you're getting some value out of this and really discussing the challenges that we are facing in this world. Just before the podcast, we were talking about how fast the rate of change is. And I don't see it slowing down. I think it's going to continue having an impact on our workplaces, on our lives. And so the topics that we're dealing with are interesting.
That's right. And I didn't really do a formal intro, and I should do that. Welcome to the Visible Workplace podcast. This is episode 5, and we are talking about digital intrusion today, which is a huge topic, huge topic. I know that things have changed, drastically over the last 20 years, but, I've felt it in every single way, every direction, whether it be my laptop, my iPhone, social media, phone calls, text messages, it's just never ending. And it's this sort of love-hate relationship. So I'm looking forward to delving into that today. I guess to start with, what I mean by a love-hate relationship is it's the dopamine hit. It's the, I want to be on Instagram. I want to be searching and utilizing all of the wonderful things that we can do today with technology. But another part of me is, lost without it. There's sort of an urgency that hits. I don't know if you've ever felt that feeling of, have I lost my phone? It's almost like, have I lost a limb? It's frightening how horrible that feeling is, and that cannot be healthy, right?
Well, I don't know whether it's healthy or not. I mean, it's a fascinating experience that we are having around the relationship with the phone. And really going back in time a little bit, it certainly picked up at the iPhone in what was 2008 that the iPhone gets released. I mean, what are we, 2024, so 16 years ago. But even before that, the mobile phones were having an impact. But when they were just the Nokia 3310 or the ancient car phone, I remember when our father first got a phone in his car, and this was revolutionary. And previous to that, he was running around with a pager, and the page would come in and he would answer that phone. So, or call the hospital back. He was an obstetrician. So the degree of technology that we're faced with now has rapidly developed over those timeframes. And compared to the rest of, say, historical time, it usually takes millions and millions of years to see like one change. And we are seeing multiple changes almost daily. And it is insane. Like, for our evolution as human beings to be in this soup of chaos, this soup of change with the digital revolution that has happened, it's putting a lot of strain on things. And our minds to cope with it, it's fascinating to see what sort of difficulties and yet also what sort of opportunities are present.
That kind of piqued my interest at evolution. It's an interesting one to, think about humans evolving with technology. And I suppose you talk about the rapidness of how everything's transpired. And I feel like there's this tension between, the human brain is so capable of running with something. And, we probably only use 30% of our ability brain power wise. So in one aspect, it's kind of, something that humans can really cope with, but almost on an emotional level, that's where I think the tension lies, because it takes a lot of our time. It's disruptive to other things that we might want to be doing, and it's, I suppose it's opening up all sorts of new things, which is great, but it's also challenging for us. I suppose, you tell me, like, how do we use this technology in a positive way? Should there be boundaries with how much we use it per day? How do we manage this situation, particularly with the demands of work? I know that I can do a long day, 8 a.m. to 5:30. I can easily come home, get our kids sorted, and settle right back into some more hours of work, because it's all there available, all the software that I require. It's just a never-ending situation if I want it to be. So in that way, it's quite intrusive. And I suppose, depending on your work ethic and your attitude towards, like what else is going on in your life, maybe you just spiral into being a workaholic. I don't know. Other things are intrusive as well, like social media. Sometimes I feel like people are always in contact with me and it's too much. Other times I almost crave more of that. So there's all of these elements that are going on. How are we supposed to manage all of this?
I mean, there's just a vast amount of issues, even with that last discussion that you opened up. Okay, so we've got digital intrusion during work hours. So I'm trying to do my work, and then there's the ding of the email, the ding of social media, the ding, all of those intruding into the work that I'm meant to be doing. So that's during work hours. And then now I head home and the work doesn't really stop because it's very available. And certainly as a parent, I recognize that the kids used to go to bed a fair bit earlier than they do now. But there would be oh my goodness, now I can catch up. And it would be totally possible because of the access to the internet, bring up whatever I was working on, do another hour and a half. So we've got a couple of issues here. One is the digital intrusion of the notifications going off and what that's doing to focus, to the capacity to actually get stuff done. And then on the other side, the intrusion and the fusing of work-life balance. And these two things, I mean, one of the things that comes, if I'm not getting the work done during the day because I'm constantly allowing interruptions, then I'm going to end up having to do it at nighttime. But my poor discipline, or my choice not to say, no, I don't want that, allows, again, intrusion. I'm not really performing. So there's perhaps the potential here that, can I block the intrusion, turn off the notifications, get some work done, and then perhaps allow a window? But you did mention an interesting thing, which was the feelings that come through when the notifications go off. And I do wonder whether our brains are being hijacked to a significant degree. And I was speaking to my personal trainer this morning, and she described two very distinct experiences. On one side, for her, the notification came through and she was like, oh, I wonder what that could be. I wonder what that's going to mean. Is it good news? Is it bad news? Triggering a state of anxiety. And on the other side, a description of her teenage, it must be daughter-in-law or something like that, going, oh yeah, this is great. I feel great. Ding, ding, I'm feeling great. Somebody cares. Somebody loves me. The dopamine hit on the other side. So I don't know. We are in uncharted territory. There's no doubt about that. That if we I've thought about this experiment, bringing someone from the 18th century to 2024.
See how they talk.
What is this?
Absolutely. So I think I'd love to get into a deeper discussion about both, but let's first go back to the intrusive nature of notifications at work. And let's just bring to everybody's attention that there is no such thing as multitasking. So every time you get interrupted, there is a certain period of time. I can't remember exactly what it is. You might know, Tom. I think it's around the 6-minute mark. It's something quite long where you will need to you've been interrupted and your focus has changed, and then you need to refocus on what you were doing before. Oh, what was I doing before? Relearn, tell yourself what you were doing, and here you go again. So there is no multitasking. That is a myth, other than mothers multitasking with certain things. In terms of work life, I don't think that multitasking exists. Every time that I'm at work doing something and an interruption comes through, I have to reset. And that is time consuming. And it can be very taxing and lead to that anxiety, because I was just in the middle of doing something that required some pretty intense concentration. And now that has been interrupted. So I suppose, there have to be strategies in place to either prevent this from happening, you're not going to be able to multitask. You're not going to be able to not be interrupted. So it has to be strategies, I think, with this particular issue.
I mean, I've certainly heard the 6-minute mark being mentioned in terms of let's say that I'm working on a single task and I'm now kind of in a flow state. I'm very focused. It's pretty much become my only thing that I'm working on. And then I get interrupted, then the difficulty of the brain to shift to whatever the interruption was, deal with that, then come back, refocus, and then kind of get the wheel flowing again. The inertia spinning of like, where was I? What was I up to? Okay, that 6 minutes is probably still on the low side for me. Like sometimes I will I lose track of time when I enter into flow state. So I don't know when it kind of kicks in, but it could be 10, 12, 15, 20 minutes in order to really drop into that like almost automatic experience. I'm seeing connections, I'm seeing things that are coming through, edits or rewrite, whatever it is. But it could be longer than 6 minutes. But one of the concerns I've had, let's say it is 6 minutes, it feels to me like the chances of being interrupted more frequently than 6 minutes is pretty high. So I'm never actually focused on the work that I'm meant to do at all. That if I get a 2-minute interruption and then another one 3 minutes and then another one 30 seconds and another one 5 minutes and another one 2 minutes, there's never even the 6 minutes to re-enter the flow state. And so I'm not really getting much done at all.
Well, yes, I can totally relate to that situation. Most of my day is that way, interrupted. There's only some chunks where I do report writing, where I'm able to get into the flow state and actually just work my way through several thousand words at a time. But the rest of my work is more dynamic. There are interruptions. Even the nature of the software that I use, it gives you alerts. You have to jump around certain different parts, and you always have that feeling. So I think I'm getting better at managing it. But I suppose it depends on how tired I am and my state of concentration that day and my emotional state, and all sorts of things come into why I'm better at concentrating some days than other. But yes, it is something that I have to deal with day in, day out, the constant interruptions. It's never going to go back to, pen and paper and nothing, no digital intrusion at all. So it's sort of managing the situation. And I think something that's helped me is to task batch. But something else that's helped me, so when I say task batch, I'm talking about the first thing I do when I sit at my desk is check my emails and attend to them for 30 minutes. Then I don't look at them again for, several hours, if not 5 hours. Like, it's just, I can't just keep checking emails. It's too much of an interruption. Something else, so I try and task match. It's difficult with the nature of the work that I do because there's so many stakeholders I have to, reach out to, and there might be a catalyst that the catalyst sort of creates this chain of I need to contact several people. I need to look up several things. It's not just one task that I have to do. There might be 7 things involved with reaching a particular goal for a client. So the other thing that really helps me settle into some sort of, I don't know, feeling of I'm organized, my mind is organized, is actually having a pen and paper and doing my writing some notes the old-fashioned way, because when you're doing that in the process, you can't be interrupted. Nothing's going to jump out of the paper to alert you of anything. And it's also just a really good way of writing down what I need to be done. What are the big frog things that need to be done first thing in the day? What are the other tasks that are less important? And I'm physically in touch with the pen and paper, and I don't ever feel that sort of intrusion. And it's not a huge part of my day, but it's something that kind of keeps me a little bit calmer when there's all of this digital intrusion with my, many, things open on my computer and different software and this and that. And it's just, it gets very exhausting.
I mean, one solution that I have had some success. I mean, what you describe is very helpful in terms of, hey, here's when I check emails, and that's it. I check from 9 till 9:30 and 1 till 1:30. I've actually remembered calling a friend many years back, and he described, I check my voicemails at 1 p.m. every day. Don't expect a response in that outside of that time frame. And so it limits the amount of information coming in, which I think it's quite possible these days, if you don't have a screening experience of what's going on, of data coming in, then you just end up email, these conversations are going on, and yet not that much is progressing. So the batching is extremely powerful. One of the concepts that I've struggled with is the idea of turning off access to the internet to get stuff done. But it's difficult if I need to use the internet to get my work done.
Correct. So that my mind, that kind of, and what you were saying about the gentleman that said he only checks his voicemails at 1 p.m. We're almost entering into a conversation about boundaries with yourself. So if you can't turn the internet off, we're talking about establishing really good boundaries. And I've had to do this. I have Thursdays off, and some of my clients have said to me, why don't you answer my phone calls on Thursday? And I said, well, I don't work on Thursday. I won't be answering your phone calls. And just having those really good boundaries with clients or with yourself. I'm not going to do work on a Thursday. That's my day to do other things.
It's but that question mark is, why can't I get hold of you? Why can't I, like that expectation from the world that we should all be on all the time and contactable. It's a very difficult place to find ourselves. And I think Australia may have just brought in laws that says you don't have to respond to work requirements outside of work hours. Which is pretty interesting that they've actually had to legislate that and say, you know what, but on the same token,
emails. You don't have to, it was emails. You don't have to take work-related emails after hours.
You don't have to take work-related email. And yet, as you described, working after hours is very common as well. Don't think that there's just like 1 or 2 people doing that. So for those of you just wondering what happened, we just had a little digital intrusion of an unusual kind, which is Annabelle, your computer just decided to just stop. Is that correct?
You had battery. You know, this is the thing with technology. This is the love-hate relationship that I'm talking about. it's so beautiful when it all works well, and it's so damn, annoying when it doesn't.
Well, it's a beautiful example of digital intrusion, other than it was the computer dying that was the intrusion, as opposed to an interruption that we're much more familiar with. But what I'm literally experiencing is that we were quite deep in a flow state, discussing. And then you've come back on and said, hey, what were we up to? I'm like, I don't remember. And then you had to say, you were like, I'm not sure either. But this is exactly what we're dealing with.
It's actually a really bizarre experience that this is happening live, because it's exactly what happens at work. It's going to take 6 minutes to reset or longer to return to what were we talking about. You're getting it live.
Well, it is. So, all right, let's come to a solution that I have trialed with some success over the last maybe 2 to 3 months. And that was that the first thing in the morning, I leave my phone on airplane mode. And airplane mode is a wonderful, wonderful tool for preventing connection to the internet and allowing stuff to get done. So ideally in the morning, I am meditating, exercising, I do some journaling, and then I turn on the internet at that point. And I didn't used to do that. And I would turn off the airplane mode, and it would go ding, 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 ding. All of these things would come through. And I'm having a way better morning experience because I don't turn on immediately to the wider world, the internet, everybody else's requirements from me. And it took some discipline. There was a certain addiction to finding out what emails were coming through, what direct messages were coming through, what this, what that, even looking at the news before getting started into my day. And I am feeling a significantly better experience of my mornings, which sets up my days because of this.
That's an interesting routine that you've established. It's great that it's working better for you. I think that human beings have such curiosity. And then, of course, there's, the dopamine hit. So I think most people would find it incredibly difficult to detach from, technology the way that you are. But, if people can't do it every morning like that, maybe there's one morning a week they could do it, or maybe there's a block of time they could do it, or maybe they could do one down from that, which is put on the do not disturb, so that's preventing the phone from dinging. But I suppose, you're still able to look at things. I'm not sure I could resist. It's probably something that I should try. I feel like I'm just, always really curious as to what's going on out there in, the big wide world. But am I better off for it? I'm not sure. But this is kind of getting into the emotional side that we talked about earlier. We've talked about the intrusion with the workplace, but the emotional side of, needing to be part of social media and wanting to feel attention or love or, just purpose through the internet. And this is, I think, incredibly challenging, not just for people that work, but for the whole lifespan, young people, old people. There's that connection. It's one of, is it Maslow or one of the psychologists has the needs, and the need for social connection is incredibly profound. So here we find ourselves with the perfect way to connect. But then there's the unhealthiness of, well, how much do you need, and the dopamine hits, and what's healthy attention and what's not, and where are there dangerous avenues, and how do you know where to draw a line with yourself, and this is I read a sad statistic the other day. It's social media. Since the inception of social media, teenage suicides have doubled. So there is, and I use that as an example. I know that's just one area that's devastating, but if it's doing that, it does have a negative impact on humans. And how do we manage this and protect ourselves and protect our loved ones?
Well, I think for me, a couple of things. Like, it's highly likely that we are now overexposed to the number of people that we perhaps traditionally would have been exposed to. That I think I can't remember the book, but they were talking about, like, there's some people who are super networkers that know a lot of people, and they have like 1,500 people that they know. And then some people, most of us are not, like, our society is like maybe 500, and some of us like down at 100 people. And yet the technology is opening us up to hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people that at some level there's a connection. I looked at my Facebook friends, 846 Facebook friends, 2,500 followers on. I'm like, whoa, I really struggle. I actually put it down from consulting with GP that when I'm open, like I'm seeing someone, I'm fully present, and then I kind of close down their file and forget about it. Otherwise, I end up overloaded every day seeing 20, 25 people. And so my mind just kind of got used to just shut the file. I shut the file. And then when I see them, it's fine. It all opens up. But the difficulties of this exposure, it's very challenging for the emotional experience. What are other people thinking? What are other people saying? Even in doing this podcast and seeing like, well, maybe someone's like, you guys are not doing a great job. Other people are like, hey, you're doing a great job. Maybe you're doing this, maybe you're doing that. All of these thoughts that are coming up. And most likely it's like, am I still part of the tribe? Am I safe in this community? But digitally, like, it's like, whoa, I've got a lot more people that are having an opinion, a judgment. I've got to be okay with that. Otherwise, probably shouldn't be doing the podcast.
Exactly.
The other issue that comes up that we're seeing medically is just this huge rise in ADHD. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So much so that the pediatricians and the psychiatrists, it's this huge problem. It's consuming all of the resources for those specialties. Now, the question that comes to me is, was it always there and we are now just seeing a diagnosis of this condition? And it's like, well, actually, yeah, all of these people, a third of the population or something, had ADHD, and we just missed it as a diagnosis. Or did something change in the last 5 or 10 years that is now inducing this problem with focus? And I got to say, I'm tending towards it's the second.
Is that possible? Yeah, yeah, it is possible. How would that impact the human brain? Because I can see the link between the intrusion and the having to reset and you have to focus harder and work your brain so much harder to stay on track, stay focused. But how does that essentially create a higher number of ADHD diagnoses?
Well, my thought of it, if I'm scrolling a feed, whether it's news, whether it's social media, whatever it is, I'm actually task swap. What's this story about? What's this person saying? What's this task swap? And it's happening every 1, 2, 3 seconds. And now I'm training myself to be able to do that skill set while at work being asked to be able to focus for 3 hours in one condition. I'm like, well, this is unlikely to be conducive, that if I'm trained from these devices to have a 1 to 3 second attention span, then I'm expecting to be able to go to work and hold attention on a single focus for even 20 minutes, that's a huge jump from 2 to 3 seconds. So I think that's why we're seeing so much attention deficit disorder. I'm not a specialist into it. And, obviously the psychiatrists will have their own opinion. But my take on it is that we did not have a whole host of people missing the diagnosis. Yes, there were probably some. And there's more awareness around ADHD now that they're like, oh no, I've got it. But this massive explosion in poor attention, to me, is likely that we are scrolling feeds so fast that our brains are just becoming used to 1 to 3 seconds of attention on any one particular task.
And then it sort of, that makes me think, how are we making these choices going forward? How will this affect us going forward? Is it embracing technology even more? Chat GPT, AI, and we don't need to train our concentration to be an extended period of time because we're not being trained in that way from 5 years old? Or do we need to take action here and make sure that our youth are being trained to extend their concentration beyond 3 seconds? So I
wouldn't say it's just young people
for another time.
I think it's a bigger conversation, and it's certainly not just young people. It's across the board. Maybe the very elderly who are not using the devices so much, but it's a risk for everybody. So we're coming to the end of the show.
Yes. Yep. And
Annabel,
my
why don't
final
you lead away?
I go straight back to the beginning about what I said. It's still a love-hate relationship for me. So I'm not sure. As you said, we didn't close, we opened, which to me means that this is a topic that needs a lot of thought, a lot of consideration, and some more discussion for us. It's not going anywhere. It's not going away anytime soon. So, we need to think hard about how we manage our lives with technology. As I said, it remains a love-hate relationship. It's just sitting there, pulling at me and pushing at me, and I'm just doing my best as a human being to manage it.
My takeaways, I got to say, I really liked your thoughts on boundaries, that this is a boundary issue, and that if I can hold a boundary and say, I'm turning off notifications, or I'm turning off the internet, or I'm not going to receive emails or SMS or app notifications during this period. I think that's for me, that's our first step. It's like, okay, for the next half hour, I'm doing this one task and I'm not going to allow the intrusion. And then come out of that experience, maybe do the notification experience, feel good, and then lock back down with firm boundaries. And then supporting others in this, that if somebody is not replying, then I'm going to make the hopeful assumption that they're holding a boundary to get the work done. So big topic today.
I love that. It's always try and recognize somebody else's situation. It's, really critical.
Beautiful. All right, Annabel, that has been a wrap for episode number 5 with a little meta experience of the laptop deciding to have its own little intrusion. It's been a lot of fun. Once again, the time has flown by. Look forward to seeing you next week for the next episode of Visual Workplace. Catch you then.
See you then. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining us at the Visual Workplace. This is a notification that the information and ideas discussed here are general in nature and do not take into account your specific circumstances. You should seek specialist advice for any medical, financial, emotional, mental, or other difficulties that you are facing with appropriate specialists and professionals so that they can apply your specific circumstances and give you the required advice. Thank you for joining us, but this is also a notification that all information is indeed general in nature and not specific for your personal circumstances.